you on mute since you're typing away.
Shabbat Shalom. I want to invite
She also
people as they come in to introduce themselves in the chat just briefly. Maybe share your name, where you're joining us from tonight as we gather here together. It is terrific to all be together tonight, both on YouTube Live, on Zoom, to celebrate Shabbat together this evening, and on this Shabbat that falls between Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israeli Independence Day, and I'm thinking about our most recent program about Israel, where we had a speaker from the Ahavat Institute to speak about environmental impact in the Negev and environmental justice issues in Israel, and Earth Day next week. I am thrilled to be joined tonight by our Social Action Tikkun Olam chairs, Vivian Kane and Shelley Sanders, as well as Rabbi Katy Allen, who's joining us from outside of Boston, Massachusetts, who is going to share some Torah of the earth with us later this evening. And so Shabbat Shalom, it's so wonderful to all be together. Tonight we'll be using Siddur Kol HaNeshama. So if you have your copy handy, it's time to take it off the bookshelf. If you do not have a copy handy, don't worry. Thanks to Reconstructing Judaism and our Department of Thriving Communities, which is our congregational wing, a PDF version has been made available throughout the pandemic so that we're able to gather and create sacred spaces in all of the different corners of our homes and our living rooms and dens and apartments and in parks and in all of those places and spaces which we all now call our sanctuary. And so I'm going to put in the chat both on YouTube and on Zoom the link for anyone who needs a copy of our Siddur tonight. And anyone who has been with us throughout the pandemic knows that if there is one thing that I cannot do, it is type and talk at the same time. So if I'm putting something in the chat, I apologize for a very brief pause while I type it in. And so we'll begin here tonight as we gather from Washington, D.C., and Lansdale, and Dresher, and Massachusetts, and West Mount Airy, and Ambler, and all of the different places where we are gathered. We will begin by lighting our Shabbat candles, bringing in that light, even as the light that warms and sustains life on this earth, the sun, sets. We bring in the light of our Shabbat candles, allowing that light of the new day, the day of rest, to warm us and bring us new life. Page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Shabbat. Yanaranai nai nai yanaranai nai nai yanaranai nai 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 yanaranai nai nai yanaranai nai nai yanaranai nai nai yanaranai nai 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 yanaranai nai nai yanaranai nai yanaranai nai yanaranai nai 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 yavanai nai nai yanaranai nai yanaranai nai yanaranai nai. Page 7. Yedid nefesh av harachaman meshoch avdecha el retzonecha yarutz altecha kemo hayhal yeshtachaveh el mul hadarecha תרב לו ידידותך מנוף עצוב וכל טעם The last verse. Higalena ufros chavivi halai atzukat shelomecha ta'ir heret michvodecha nagila venismechavach Maher ahuv kiva moed vechoneni ki me'olam yananai hainai yananai hainai yananai hainai yananai yananai hainai yananai hainai yananai hainai yavadai yananai hainai yananai hainai yananai hainai yavadai yananai hainai yananai hainai Shabbat Shalom. I want to invite you as you come in tonight again to introduce yourselves. Take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat, either on YouTube or on Zoom. It's so wonderful to all be here together. Shabbat Shalom to Beverly, or as I like to call her, Mom from Washington, D.C. Shabbat Shalom, Rich in Lansdale. And Shabbat Shalom to Shelly and to Vivian. Shabbat Shalom, Anita and Jules and Ruth and Taco and Manny. Shabbat Shalom to Marty and Irene. Shabbat Shalom to Michelle and to Philip. Shabbat Shalom as well. Michelle, who's in Hatboro. Shabbat Shalom to Sandra, and Shabbat Shalom to Sharon and to Toby and to Steve. And Shabbat Shalom especially to our guest teacher, our guest darshanit and presenter tonight, Rabbi Katy Allen, who's joining us from Massachusetts. It's wonderful to be here all together tonight, both on Zoom and on YouTube Live for our Shabbat of Environmental Justice. Shabbat Shalom also from Diana B. and Shabbat Shalom from Shelly and Guy. And now that we've done a little bit of Kabbalat Panim, a little bit of seeing one another's faces, whether physically or metaphorically through names, because we know that when we all come into this space together, from wherever we are sitting physically, we know that when we see one another's names in the chat, or when we see one another's faces on Zoom, that we are all here together. And so we turn to page 21, and we enter into Kabbalat Shabbat. Lechu neranena l'Adonai, nariha letzor ishenu, nekadma fanav betodah, bizmirot nariha lo. Ki el gadol Adonai u'melech gadol al kol Elohim. Arbaim shana akud bedor va'omaram toeh levavhem vehem lo yadu drachai asher nishpati be'api im yavon el menuchati. Page 25. Shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai, baruch hu shemo, basaru miyom leyom yeshuato, shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz shiru l'Adonai, baruch hu shemo, basaru miyom leyom yeshuato, basaru miyom leyom yeshuato. Lifnei Adonai kiva lishbot haaretz yishbot tevel betzedek ve'amim be'emunato. As we prepare to turn to page 37 for Psalm 29, Mizmor LeDavid, I want to share a poem as a kavanah, as an intention, that we often read as part of our Shabbat morning service, because it is, of course, on Shabbat morning that we often think of ourselves either being outdoors or looking out the window at the beautiful blossoming of nature all around us, because sunlight gives us the ability to see all of the beautiful trees and flowers, especially this time of year as winter turns over into spring and spring really starts to, at least where we are here in Philadelphia, really pop. The difference between last week and this week is just incredible in terms of the amount of green that there is in the world. But when we read all of these beautiful poems and meditations in our Siddur only during the daylight, we miss something. So for those who don't know, although I can't imagine by this point who doesn't know, I am the parent of a nearly 4-year-old, and she watches, among other things, Daniel Tiger. And one of our favorite episodes is a special about nighttime. And the family goes and walks to a special event at the library where they're having a pajama story time. And all around them, the neighborhood of make-believe, because of course Daniel Tiger is the successor of the tradition and the Torah of Mr. Rogers. So Daniel lives in the neighborhood of make-believe. And so as Daniel and his family are out walking, they notice that the neighborhood of make-believe looks different. And he wonders to his mom and to his dad and to his little baby sister, why his world looks so different. And they say, oh, well, this is nighttime. We're usually not outside at night because usually it's time to go to bed and it's dark. And then they sing the refrain of that episode, let's find out what's special at night. And as they watch the stars come out, and as they notice the night falling, and as they notice the fireflies begin to come out, and they hear the sounds of crickets and frogs, and they notice different bird song in the air, they connect to the natural world around them, especially this character of Daniel, who is a 4 or 5-year-old, or at least supposed to be, connects to nature in a completely different way in this world beyond the sunshine. And so as we find out what's special at night, as we this Shabbat launch into a recommitment to our environmental justice principles, I want to share on the bottom of page 185 a poem by Rabbi Rami Shapiro. Nature is God's nigun, a wordless melody of unfolding life. To awaken to God, we must hear the nigun. To awaken to God, we must listen in deep silence. Silence arises when thinking ceases. If we would know God, we must quiet the mind. Cease the chatter that passes for knowledge, when in fact it only flatters the foolish. We cannot live without words, but let us not imagine that words are sufficient. As a symphony needs rest to lift music out of noise, so we need silence to lift truth out of words. And as the sounds, the natural world of the evenings, especially for those of us who have our windows open, begin to filter into our ears, we also notice the natural imagery woven throughout our psalms as we rise in spirit or in body for Psalm 29. Page 37. Mizmor LeDavid, Havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, Havu l'Adonai, Kavod v'hozai, Havu l'Adonai, Kevod shemo, Ishtachavu l'Adonai, B'hadrat Kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamayim, El hakavod hirim, Adonai al mayim rabim, Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai be'adar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon, Vayarkidehem kemo hegel Levanon, Vesirion, Kemo vein re'emim, ay, Kol Adonai chotzev lahavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yechol elayalot, Vayechasof Yeharot, Uvehechalo Kulo Omer Kavod, ay, Adonai lahamabu yashav, Yeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai ohoz le'amo yitain, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Yai, nai, yai, nadai, Shabbat Shalom. We turn together to Lecha Dodi, our sort of central piyut of Kabbalat Shabbat, and we envision as we sing Kabbalah, as we sing Lecha Dodi, at least I do, that image of the followers of Rabbi Isaac Luria in Tzfat going out into the fields of lush green in the mountains of the north of Israel in Tzfat, as the sun began to set on Friday evening, probably at about maybe like this dusk quality, at least where we are here, at least, that light blue, that fading of the colors, paralleling that dawn where we're first able to distinguish between the techelet and the lavan, the blue and the white in our tzitzit, in our fringes of our talis, but the reverse. In the evening, as one day turns into the other, going out into the fields to welcome the Shabbat bride, not coming in from the fields. We welcome the Shabbat when we go out, when we connect with, not when we disconnect from. And so we go out, we release ourselves from whatever that thing was that was holding us back this week, and we go out into the field, physically or metaphorically. We feel the breeze on our face as those first breaths of Shabbat come in, as we sing Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Hishmihanu el hameyuchad ayay Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem ultiferet ve'litchila. Hey, lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nehelcha כי מקור הברכה ay מראש מקדם נסוכה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Top of page 45. Hitoreri hitoreri Kiva orech kuhumi uri ay uri uri shir daberi kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Yamin u'smol tifrotzi v'et Adonai taritzi ay al yadish ben partzi ונסמכה ונגילה. lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. We rise in spirit or in body as we face the entrance to our homes, our apartments, our dining rooms, wherever it is where we are tonight. And as we face outward to greet the Shabbat bride, we also imagine that we're facing outward towards one another, perhaps looking at one another through the windows of our doorways. For the final verse of Lecha Dodi, page 47. Boi v'shalom ateret bala Gam besimcha uvetzochola toch emune am segula boi chala lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Yanai yanai yananai yanai 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 yananai yanai yanai. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. And Shabbat Shalom to those who've joined us since last we greeted one another. Shabbat Shalom to Joseph in Winmore, and to Carolyn and Marty, and to Jill Marmion, and Shabbat Shalom to Wendy and John and Lucy, and Shabbat Shalom to Sharon, and I don't know, is Ted with you? And to Sharon and Steve. Many Sharons tonight. It is so wonderful to all be together this evening on YouTube Live, on Zoom, in all of our homes. And we turn to our Psalm for Shabbat, page 49, Psalm 92. Mizmor shir lehom hashabbat, Tov lehodot lahadonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, lehagid baboker chastecha, ve'emunatcha valelot, alei asur ve'alei navel, alei higayon bechinor. Mizmor shir lehom hashabbat, tov lehodod lahadonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ki semachthani Adonai befoalecha, b'maaseh yadecha haranein. Ma gadlu ma'asecha Adonai, me'od amku machshevotecha. Mizmor shir le'yom hashabbat, tov lehodot lahadonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Mizmor shir le'yom hashabbat, tov lehodot lahadonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Ishbar lo We join together reading in the English the last few lines rather than singing in the Hebrew of this psalm as we notice the natural imagery. The righteous shall flourish like palm trees, like the cedars of Lebanon they grow, implanted in the house of the all-knowing one, amid the courtyards of our God they bear fruit. In their old age they'll put forth seed, fleshy and fresh they'll ever be, to tell of the uprightness of the one alone, my rock, in whom no fault resides. We imagine our roots going down, firmly planting us in those places where we have experienced sacredness, in those houses of Adonai, however and wherever and whenever we've experienced them. And it is with that rootedness holding us in those places, even if those places were places we stood 10, 15, 20 years ago, or perhaps on a walk earlier today, or perhaps at a bat mitzvah of your grandchild only a few weeks ago, or whenever those places and spaces and times were. They ground us in each moment, and they keep grounding us as we rise in spirit or in body for Baruch Hu, our call to worship on page 57. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. And the blessing gives us strength and makes our vision clear. And the blessing gives us peace and the courage to dare. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. Barechu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bidvaro mariv aravim bechokma poteach sharim uvitvuna mishaneh itim umaliv et hazmanim. With divine discernment you make the seasons change. And some creator of day and night, who rolls back light before the dark and dark before the light, who makes day pass away and brings on the night, dividing between day and night, the leader of the throngs of heaven is your name. El Chai v'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Leolam Va'ed, Baruch Ata Adonai, Hama'ari V'Aravim. And I'd like to invite Vivian Kane, one of our co-chairs of Social Action Tikkun Olam, to read for us Rami Shapiro's interpretation of Ahavat Olam on page 61.
We are loved by an unending love. We are embraced by arms that find us. Even when we are hidden from ourselves. There's like an echo. Sorry.
I don't hear it on my side.
Oh, okay. We are touched by fingers that soothe us, even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us, even when we are too embittered to hear. We are loved by an unending love. We are supported by hands that uplift us, even in the midst of a fall. We are urged on by eyes that meet us, even when we are too weak for meeting. We are loved by an unending love. Embraced, touched, soothed, and counseled. Ours are the arms, the fingers, the voices. Ours are the hands, the eyes, the smiles. We are loved by an unending love. Blessed are you, beloved one, who loves your people, Israel.
Thank you. Baruch Atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. Page 65, the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'otecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta baham b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'aderech u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha u'kashartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chetavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'v'sha'arecha v'haya im shamoa tishmo mitzoter shenochi mitzavcha tam. We continue silently with one of the two biblical selections that follows. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת. Below the line on page 68, there's a teaching and there's a parallel one as well in the accompanying the biblical, what is called Biblical Selection 2, which is the traditional second paragraph of the Ve'ahavta, that I wanted to read aloud this evening as we're centering environmental justice principles in in connection to this Shabbat. The drash on this traditional second paragraph of the Shema, this warning against idolatry has ecological significance. If we continue to pollute the environment and thus display contempt for the integrity of God's creation, pure rain will cease to fall, and the ground will cease to give forth its produce. Page 77, Mi Chamocha, and this song of liberation sung by our ancient mythic ancestors at the shores of the Sea of Reeds at their moment of liberation. We also imagine as we look across at the many, many miles that we have to travel in order to find environmental liberation, find our way out of this situation that we humans have, this predicament that we have put this earth in. What that journey through the sea will look like for us, and what that wilderness on the far shore will look like as we cross through together, as we work towards a sustainable and life-sustaining planet for all of us. Page 77 and 79. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך מי כמוך מי כמוך מי כמוך מי כמוך מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך מי כמוך מי כמוך מי כמוך מי כמוך מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות עושה פלא נורא תהילות עושה פלא מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה לי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. Page 81. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום ועמידנו מלכנו לחיים ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Sukkat Shalomecha. ושמור צאתנו ואוהנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ועל ירושלים. Page 85. V'shamru, we rise in spirit or in body. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, בעלמא דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בהגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה, יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתחומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמא ואמרו amen. Page 91 begins the liturgy of our Amidah, but I want to remind everyone of the Amidah meditations that follow in our book, and the beautiful Shviti, the visual meditative guide for the Amidah, on page 89, designed by Betsy Teutsch. And we'll enter into this Amidah silent for Shabbat evening, where the liturgy gets to conform to whatever we need it to be, the traditional words of the Siddur, or the prayers of our hearts, or anything in between. We enter into it with a kavanah, an intention, by Rabbi Sheila Peltz Weinberg, below the 2 asterisks on page 88. Dear God, open the blocked passageways to you, the congealed places. Roll away the heavy stone from the well, as your servant Jacob did when he beheld his beloved Rachel. Help us to open the doors of trust that have been jammed with hurt and rejection. As you open the blossoms in spring, even as you open the heavens in storm, open us to feel your great, awesome, wonderful presence. The Amidah silent for Shabbat evening. Take a few minutes for your own tefillah. Shalom. 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 Shabbat Shalom. And welcome back into this space all together. During the silent Amidah, we get a moment to be on our own with tefillah, with prayer, with conversation with the divine, with the meditation that our heart needs, with the quiet that we so desire. And then we re-enter perhaps into our most public moment of our service on a Friday night, our Mishaberach Lecholim, our prayer for healing and wholeness, where we get to be seen and feel seen by those in our community who hold us when we're ill, when we have the opportunity to reveal those who are in our hearts, who are in need of healing, folks in our families, our communities, folks who have accompanied us during different stages and phases of our life, and we watch as our community grows to hold all of our beloveds as they are in search of healing. And so during the 2 verses of our prayer in song, I'm going to read the list that I have here, our congregational Mishaberach list, but I know that it is not complete because each of us comes with people about whom we're thinking and caring and hoping for healing of body, healing of mind, healing of spirit. So I want to invite you to also, as we sing the setting of Mishaberach by Debbie Friedman, Zichrona Livracha, to write names for Mishaberach in the chat, both on Zoom and on YouTube, so that we can call all of them to our mind and our hearts as we support one another on our journeys towards healing.
Yisheberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Imotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say
This evening, we're thinking of and sending our hopes and our energy for healing and wholeness to Dorothy Berlin, Rosine Paul, Jean Horowitz, Debbie Hoffman, Bobby Olkin, Barbara Krugman, Andrea Abrams Herbert, James Alberts, Roberta Archibald, Arden Bell, Carol Mueller Bell, Barry Bell, Rabbi Deborah Bowen, Bill Conrad, Robin Cupo, Francesca Deaver, Faye Fishman, Brian and Joan Flaherty, Eric Gershman, Jonathan Giannini, George and Gail Glansberg, Hal Goodman, Talia Gottesman, Barbara Granger, Ed Grimes, Alberta Hall, Cordula Hamish, Peter Hoagland, Chava Hurley, Michelle Kalish, Sharon Cass, Beverly and Howard Kaufman, Fran Kaufman, Elsie Lieberstein, Len McEwen, Robert Mueller, Anthony Nero, Lisa Nicholson, Riley and Thomas Pablo, Stan Pollock, Abby Rosenberg, Mike Rosenberg, Shelley Sanders, Willie Schneer, Bertha Schwartz, Margaret Steiber, Lloyd Suter, Lynn Van Engel, Isabel Vita, Stan Weckstein, Millie Weissman, Grace Zangwill, Eileen Zeff, Sarah Blue, Arnold Burson, Marcia Applebaum, Doug Proudman, Rob Johnson, Saeed Zarif, Denise Fury and her father and her son, Neil Berlin, Herta Kane, June Powell, Hal Crane, Marvin Crane, Barry Tabak, Larry Klepner, Marissa Goldman, Jonathan Jacobs, Fran Solomon, Sherwin Mendel, Mitchell Goldman, Serena Jacobs. And let us say Amen. We also include in our Mishaberach tonight all of those in our communities who are reeling from violence, especially violence at the hands of police. I know that many of us, especially those of us who have young children, especially those who have young teenage children, especially those who are raising children who do not have white-colored skin. We are reeling from the new body cam footage that has come out of the 13-year-old 7th grade middle schooler who was killed on the streets of Chicago by a police officer, and we hold in our hearts his family who is going through the nightmare scenario for any parent, and all of those parents of young teenagers of color who are holding their children so tight and living with so much fear as we move through this world right now that is so in need of justice and of peace and of reform. And we hold all of them in our hearts for this Mishaberach as well. And let us say Amen. One of the most beautiful things about being in community is that we can hold each other in hard times, and we can also hold each other in times of joy. And so as we turn to our Kiddush and we raise up our glass of sweetness filled to the brim with our sweet Kiddush wine or juice, we also celebrate smachot, joyful occasions in one another's lives. And so as we rise in spirit or in body for Kiddush, on page 119, I want to invite anyone who's celebrating something this week, a birthday, an anniversary, a publication, a graduation, a milestone, an end of chemotherapy, a new life, animal or human in your family, welcomed in, engagements, anything, sky's the limit, lost a first tooth. Do share it in new driver's licenses. Share it in the chat so that we can give you a shout out l'chaim as we say Kiddush tonight. Savri chavirai, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat mitzrayim, ki eleinu karata, ve'otanu kitashta la'avodatecha, ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. L'chaim. And a l'chaim to Lucy Raisman, whose grandson Jacob is 2 today. And a l'chaim to my family. Beverly Sclover and Beverly and Philip Sclover just announced the birth of a new grandniece. My cousin Joseph and his wife Sarah had a baby in Washington, D.C. Other l'chaims were celebrating. We shouted out to everyone. Mazel tov and l'chaim. So it is my pleasure to call forward Shelley Sanders and Vivian Kane, co-chairs of our Sado committee, Social Action Tikkun Olam at Or Hadash, to introduce our very special Shabbat Darshanit, Rabbi Katy, I can't even speak tonight, Rabbi Katy Allen. So Shelley and Vivian, come on down.
Okay. Rabbi Katy Allen is co-founder and president pro tem of the Jewish Climate Action Network, Massachusetts, and she's also the founder and rabbi of Mayan Tikva, a wellspring of hope. This is a congregation that holds services outdoors all year long. She received her master's in Jewish studies from Hebrew College in 1999, her rabbinic ordination in 2005 from the Academy for Jewish Religion in Yonkers, New York, and her chaplaincy board certification from Neshama in 2010. Prior to her ordination, Rabbi Allen worked as a science teacher, a writer and editor of educational materials, and a Jewish educator. She later served Temple Tifereth Israel in Winthrop, Massachusetts, worked as a staff chaplain at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston for 10 years, and then served part-time as a hospice chaplain at Care Group, Parmenter Hospice, and Home Care in Wayland, Massachusetts, while facilitating spirituality and earth programs at Open Spirit in Framingham, Massachusetts. Rabbi Allen lives in Wayland, Massachusetts, which she told us is just outside Boston. She lives with her spouse, Gabby Mesger, who leads the singing at Mayan Tikva. Rabbi Allen loves to walk in the woods, ride her bicycle, and tend her garden. I want to welcome you, Rabbi Allen, and I eagerly await your words.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me with you, and Shabbat Shalom to everyone. I'm really happy to be here. So I want to just start off by saying, so I'm going to share a few words of Torah, but I want to begin with the idea of our own personal Torah, because I get very often asked the question, so what does Judaism have to say about the environment, about climate change? And I kind of always think, what does Judaism not have to say? There's just so much to choose from. So I don't feel like there's one thing that Judaism has to say about this. I feel like it's just embedded in so much of what we do and what we say. But I feel like when we start to talk about climate change and our response to it, or environmental destruction, environmental justice, any of these issues, environmental injustices, any of these issues, that we need to start with our own story. And so at one point, I really explored that for myself. And I said, where did the essence, the ikar of my connection to the earth come from? So I was privileged to grow up in a rural area in southern Wisconsin and on 70 acres of land. So I had a lot of exposure to the natural world. But there's one particular piece that I remember, which was there was a spot just kind of on the other side of the valley from our house where there was this sort of grassy hillside right at the edge of the woods. And there was a place where the grass didn't ever grow too tall on the hillside. And I loved that spot. It was a spot where I went and I sat and I just found comfort. So especially as a teenager, all teenagers have angst about their families. There was trauma in my family, so all the more so. And that was a place where I felt secure, I felt comfortable, I could see the house, so I wasn't, totally separated it, but I was still at a distance and in my own space. And that place of comfort and healing and strength is something that I carried with me all of my life. So I invite you to think about, where is your most profound connection? I had lots of other opportunities to be outside and to connect with the earth, but that's the piece that sort of sticks with me as being really important, or expressing the importance of the earth to me. So the question I would ask for you is, what's your story? And maybe you know it already. And I invite you, if to mention something in the chat, if you would like, about a place that, or a setting or a time that you feel like holds the story of your relationship to the more than human world, and to all of the earth and all of sacred creation. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen, and I want to share with you a little bit of this whole question of, okay, so what does Judaism have to say about the earth? And there's so many options. There's just so many options. I'm coming from the Jewish Climate Action Network in Massachusetts. And our first little bit of Torah, the first words of Torah, okay? The very beginning, when God began to create the heaven and the earth. So here we are, right from the very beginning, acknowledging the connection of God to this earth. And it just goes on from there. This is like remembering this sacred connection. This is what it's all about. This sacred connection. God created this heaven and earth, whatever that means to us, however we understand that. We can understand it in so many ways and still have it be an expression of the sacredness of this earth, this universe, and everything that it contains. Then we go to the second story of creation. And we have this place called Eden, this paradise, this place where all of our needs are met. There's no injustice. Everything is satisfied. All the needs are satisfied. The connection to the more than human world is one of trust and connection. So there's so many places here. We move on a little farther. I forgot to put the citation, but God took Abraham outside and said, look toward heaven and count the stars if you're able to count them. And God said, so shall your offspring be. If you've ever been away from the city in a place at night, gone outdoors at night and looked up at the sky and the stars, there's so many billions and trillions of stars up there that our mind can't even begin to fathom the vastness of it. And that can help us to feel a little bit of humility, but also an incredible amount of awe. And this is God saying to Abraham, go look at this. Go outside. I'm taking you outside. Don't stay in your tent. Come outside. Be a part. Look at this incredible creation. And here we have Jacob. Jacob is running from his brother. And he's in the wilderness of the desert, and he comes to a place and he's tarried there all the night because the sun was setting. And he took one of the stones and put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And this is the place with his head upon a stone. I've always just thought this is so amazing that it tells us that he put his head on a stone to sleep. It feels like hard and cold, and yet that's where he was, out there under the sky, no one around him, when the dream with the angels going up and down on the ladder, and him waking up and said, there's God. Oh my gosh, there's God here. I didn't realize God was here in this space, in this place, in this in this sacred place, because all of it's sacred. That we talk about God being everywhere, and why not? I mean, this is all sacred. Everything is part of this amazing universe. And then we have all kinds of things, laws about sacrifice. Okay, some of these were first fruits. Okay, bring your first fruits and giving them to God. This is part of our connection, our agricultural connection to the earth. First there's the sort of, we come from this place of Eden, and eventually we become, farmers of the land. And as we do that, we remember that we're not the ones who's bringing forth all this food. It's this sacred cycles of nature and the ability of our land to produce so abundantly. And all of this, when we think about environmental justice with all of these things, because here we are, we're starting with this earth, this universe that God has given to all of us, and yet we're not all sharing in it equally. We are not, and some people are being harmed by what we're doing, and others are not, and yet that's such a disconnect with all of this pieces of all these words in Torah that tell us about how our connection to the earth should be a sacred connection. Allowing the land to rest and not planting the fields, not pruning your vineyards. In the 7th and the 8th years, where does our food come from? This is such a request for faith. This is such a demanding of faith, saying, wait a minute, you can't keep taking and taking and taking and taking. You have to pause. Just as you rest on the Shabbat, your land needs to rest on the 7th year. Shabbat for the Lord, a Shabbat of rest for the land. Imagine if we really were to allow the land to rest. Imagine, how does that feel? It's something more, it's about our connection to the land, but it's our connection to God too. So there's just so many options. When we open up Psalms, I love this, these Psalms that we recite at different times, and sometimes maybe we're singing the Hebrew and we forget what it means, but this, what wonderful images the psalmist gives us. If you start opening up Psalms and look through, there's so much incredible imagery about the earth. Here's another one. Let the heavens rejoice and the earth exult. Let the sea and all within it thunder, the fields and everything in them exalt. Then shall all the trees of the forest shout for joy. The next time you're in the woods, listen for the trees. Are they shouting for joy? And we know so much now about how trees communicate with each other. Maybe they are sometimes shouting for joy, but they may also be crying out in pain with what we're doing. And we have laws about agriculture, not letting your cattle gender with diverse kind. You shall not sow your field with mingled seed. Whatever the reasons for these in the Torah, these are all laws about being mindful of how we interact with the earth, not just to take it for granted, but to be aware of what we're doing, to be thinking about what we're doing, and to be careful about what we're doing. This is going past Torah into the Nevi'im, into Kings. 1 Kings, this is with God speaking to Elijah. Go forth and stand upon the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire a still small voice. powerful, powerful imagery about what happens on the earth and the importance of being aware and thinking of this still small voice. But here we are out in the natural world with this experience of God's presence. You know, we sing this all the time. It's a tree of life to all who have passed of it. Here we have a metaphor, but you know, we're also talking about trees because trees are life. And coming a little bit later, this is from Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, Hasidic master. And this is one of my favorite pieces. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't, but I just invite you to imagine for yourself, just close your eyes, imagine yourself outside somewhere. Master of the universe, grant me the ability to be alone. May it be my custom to go outdoors each day among the trees and grass, among all living things. And there may I be alone and enter into prayer to talk with the one to whom I belong. May I express there everything in my heart, and may all the foliage of the field, all grasses, trees, and plants, may they all awaken at my coming to send the powers of their life into the words of my prayer, so that my prayer and speech are made whole to the life and the spirit of all living things, which are made as one by their transcendent source. And when this little boy saw this picture, we were talking, and I asked him, and he said, yeah, I think I was praying. That was a prayer, that hug of the tree. And that's, you know, can our every connection to a tree be a prayer? But I come back ultimately, you know, starting with Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, God created the heavens and the earth, and then coming to Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. You know, everything is one. We lose that so much in our own oneness sometimes, in our separation, but every time we're just connected to everything. We're all connected. Everything is connected. And it's the fact that we forget that and we think about some pieces and people and plants and animals and living things and non-living things on this earth as disposable, but they're not, because everything is connected. Everything is all one large system that interconnects and works together. And I've been told, and I think it's true, that I can find something in every parasha that connects to climate change. Been accused of that, and I think it's an accurate statement. So, you know, I just wanted to bring a little piece of this week's parasha. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when a person has on the skin of his body a swelling, a rash, or a discoloration, and it develops into a scaly affection on the skin of his body, it shall be reported to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons the priest. So there are all kinds of different growths and scales and rashes and things like that in this parasha. And the question, you know, there was always this question, okay, what is this? Where is this coming from? What do we do about it? And, you know, medicine and religion were all together as one in the Torah. And actually that recognition, that reality that they had before modern times was a reality that we tend to forget. And we're fully aware of, during this pandemic, of unexpected and, you know, unwanted, not understood and frightening and all kinds of things like that, that can come all those kinds of feelings that can come in response to something that is beyond our, really in some level, beyond our comprehension. A pandemic is on some level, I think, beyond our comprehension. It's so huge. But also the question becomes, okay, where is the connection to our interaction with the earth, and where we've gone wrong that can be the cause of maybe this pandemic or other things, Ebola, all these different kinds of things that have developed. So if we really unravel it and explore it, we're going to find connections with all of these kinds of things to how we interact with the earth. That second paragraph of the Shema that talks about, if we are in good relationship with the earth, then things will go well. And if we're not, then things are not going to go well. And that's kind of what I feel like is being expressed here to some extent. And so I think that we can go from here to thinking about other ways the ways that we are sort of disconnected from the more than human world. So, having just said that there's something in every parasha, potentially, I just want to invite you to take a couple of minutes to if you have a Chumash or a Bible near you, if you want to open Safari or whatever, just take a minute and see. I'm going to stop sharing I'll just leave this here for a minute, this picture, if you want to look at it, or just think in your mind about passages from the Siddur, from the Torah, or Tanakh, and just think of or open randomly and see if you see something that feels like it has some kind of connection to the natural world. So let's just take a minute, and then if you find something, I invite you to write it in the chat. So I'm going to stopping my screen sharing for a share, and first I'm going to go back because there's a couple of thank you for putting links in the chat here. So while you're still looking, I just want to read these two chats about your connections to the earth. One says, for me, it's being alone in the woods, listening to the sacred soundscape of birds, insects, and water rippling over and around rocks, intersecting with the human-created noise that we must strive to balance. For me, it was the memories of planting with my children and watching their excitement as the plants grew and produced flowers and food they could not eat. So then the bigger thrill is watching them plant with their children and watching the excitement of my grandchildren's eyes. That's so true. So did anybody find a little bit of Torah that has some kind of a connection to the earth that you'd like to share, either in the chat or just unmute yourself and share? So, okay, yes.
Well, and I was just going to say, if you want to, if you're raising your hand physically and you're in Zoom, I can't necessarily see everybody at the same time, but you can, just unmute yourselves and share, or use that raise hand button if you want to be called on. But really, we're not that giant a group. We could just unmute ourselves and share. And if you find you're talking at the same time as someone else, one of you'll just organically step back. We're really good at that.
So somebody wrote into the chat, in praise, Genesis 1:2 by Ruth Bryn. Okay, in Siddur. Okay.
Jules or Ruth, do you guys want to unmute and read that out loud?
Sure, I'll do it. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Hail the hand that scattered space with stars, wrapped whirling world in bright blue blanket air, made worlds within world, elements in earth, souls within skins, every one a teeming universe. Every tree a system of semantics, and pushed beyond probability to place consciousness on this cooling crust of burning rock. Oh, praise that hand, mind, heart, soul, power, or force that is so enclosed, separated, limited planets, trees, humans, yet breaks all bounds and borders to lavish on us light, love, life, this trembling glory.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
I have one in the chat on YouTube from Carolyn. Actually, I'm not sure if it's Carolyn or Marty, but they're logged in as Carolyn. They said that they actually randomly flipped to a page in the Chumash, and out came this beautiful Torah of the environment. It's from Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 4. I looked, and lo, a stormy wind came sweeping out of the north, a huge cloud.
Yeah. So thank you to both of you. And I just invite you to, try this out. Just, spend some time just randomly opening and see how often you see something. Sometimes it's going to be really clear like that. And sometimes it might not be so clear. But if you think a little bit about this whole complexity of our earth and the complexities of our interactions and the ways that we connect that are sacred and the ways we connect that are totally not sacred and, lead to destruction and injustice, thinking about all of these complexities, what's the drash that you can find there? And, I just invite you to explore it. I think I think you can have fun with it.
There's another that just got put in the chat from Barbara.
Yes. Go ahead.
Barbara, do you want to share it? And then I saw Sandra had her hand up as well.
Yeah, one of my favorite songs, Sadi Katamar, and I just think it's so beautiful and just so picturesque.
Yeah.
Calming.
Nice.
And also the Thrush by Art Green about it. So beautiful.
Right, the righteous shall flourish like palm trees, the cedars of Lebanon may grow, that somebody put into the chat. Yes, what imagery, incredible imagery, right?
Nice. And I saw a hand from Sandra Lewis as well.
Right. Yeah. This is page 538, and it's actually some from David. It's very appropriate that we are leaving Passover and moving free is one part. The awakening of the after winter's dormancy and the first tragedies of grief thrust forth from the cold of the ground. And it's looking around, you're going to be seeing a lot of little plants, flowers, buds on the trees awake.
Right. The awakening of the earth. Thank you. Thank you. So, this is why this question is always, and people do ask me this, so what's the connection? Judaism, what does that have to say about climate change? And we know that Judaism is monolithic, that there's not, it's always like when people say, what does Judaism have to do with something or other? And somebody who's not Jewish will ask me now, I'll say, well, it all depends on whom you ask. And with this, it's just like, we're so rich, our roots, Judaism's roots are as an indigenous religion, or we've certainly lost that, but we have the roots there to reach back into and to try and remember again and to feel again, what does it mean to be indigenous? What does it mean to have that powerful connection to the earth? What does it mean for us to realize that we're part of all of this as opposed to separate from it? Because we build walls around ourselves and around it, and we separate ourselves from it. And that's part of that process that leads us to disposable people, disposable plants, disposable animals, disposable, fossil fuels, all this kind of thing that somehow or other makes us less than shalem, less than whole, and not fully connected to God. So these are things for you to think about. I'm just going to share my screen one more time and run through a little bit just for a few minutes, because the next question is, oops, what did I do? I just shared and then stopped sharing. That wasn't what I meant to do. I meant to make the slideshow. So then the question is, okay, so what? So what do we do with all of this? And so I love this story from the Talmud. Rabbi Tarfon and the elders were once reclining in the upper story of Nitzah's house in Lod when this question was posed to them: which is greater, study or action? Rabbi Tarfon answered saying, action is greater, and Rabbi Akiva answered saying, studying is greater. All the rest agreed with Akiva that study is greater because it leads to action. So that's what we're doing right now. We're studying, we're talking, we're exploring. And this is, I think, kind of where we need to start, but then we need to not get stuck there, because we could just keep studying and not allow it to lead us to action, but just to, Torah Lishma, that's, studying Torah for the sake of Torah is wonderful, and I love it, and but we also in this world need to let it lead us to action. So this is what you're doing. This is this first step. You're learning, you're talking, having conversation. I'm inviting everybody to come to this conference a week from tomorrow, which is our theme is everything is connected, and it is just so true. We pull one thing out and we don't know what the consequences of that are going to be. And then, within your community, and it sounds like you might be connecting with some other communities and think about it and create a plan. Now, again, we need to not get stuck. We just need to think about, and it could be a bigger plan or it can be a start of a plan to say, okay, what are we going to do? And I'm just going to outline certain areas where I feel like these are the things that we really need to explore and spend some time on. And the spirituality piece is important because I have a prayer for the earth here, which I'm going to read to you. Let's see, do I have that on the next slide? Yeah. So the reason that the spirituality is so important is because that's how we sustain ourselves. That's how we keep ourselves going. And if we can't keep going, if we get too distressed and upset, then, we can't function and we can't do the work that we need to do. So this is a prayer for the earth that I wrote. And so, for example, you could put this into your Shabbat morning service along with these other prayers for our country and for Israel and all of this, our community. But we don't have there a prayer for the earth. And why is that? And maybe we need to. So I just invite you to close your eyes and just kind of let back and listen to this. Ribono shel olam osei bereshit, master of the universe, creator of all, may it be your will to bless with compassion your creation. Please, God, bless this sacred earth, from the ant to the whale, from the giant redwoods to the bacteria, from the sand at the edge of the sea to the mountains, rivers, and streams, from each one of us to all humanity, all that exists in this world, we ask, from the depths of our heart, Elna, please, O God, bless it all. Please, O God, please heal it all. Sur kolo olamim, rock of all worlds, please place in our hearts understanding of the impact of our actions upon your creation. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotinu v'imotenu elna. God of our ancestors, O God, please help us. Renew within us courage and strength to do your will with a full heart. Help us to heal with wisdom your earth. Go'aleinu matzilenu, our Savior, our Redeemer, teach us to live with each other, with love and with peace, in compassion and in loving kindness. Baruch atah Adonai, vosei niflo uvarei et hakol. Blessed are you, Adonai, doer of wonders and creator of all. So, if we kind of have this kind of message repeated through ourselves, that helps us. So education, holidays, there's just so many opportunities in Judaism for connecting to the earth. Sermons, you don't have to have the whole sermon being about or the whole discussion being about climate change or something, but let it be part of the conversation. You're doing tefillah outside tomorrow. Great. That's one of my special things, special rituals, especially rituals for dealing with our grief and our sadness and our despair about what's happening. So that's one area. Decarbonizing is another area, and this is something that you can be working on in your homes and in your shul. You got to start with figuring out where you're at, what's your baseline, and then say, okay, do we want to get zero net zero at some point. What year? As soon as possible. The big and most important things that you can do either in your shul or in your homes are solar panels, heat pumps, and insulation's an important one, lighting, and the other big one is electrical vehicles. So it's like if you have to have a car, the next car you get, you don't have to go out and buy it special. But so these are things like planning, that idea, talking, figuring out, setting what you're doing. Whatever funds you have, where are they unexpectedly, you don't even realizing it, supporting fossil fuels? Soil carbon, native habitats help sequester carbon. If you have a yard, get rid of the lawns. Lawns are bad. How do we can do this. We can do this in our own homes or in a community. If you have gardens, our food choices are important. Composting, if you have a place to do it yourselves, you can get composting services. Advocating is at every level, starting within our families, within our congregation, at our local level, at the state level, at the national level. Dayenu and the Jewish Earth Alliance are two Jewish organizations that are now doing national level advocacy work. So these are important things. And at the Third Jewish Climate Action Conference, there's going to be options to learn about a lot of these. So all of these are all areas where you can actually take action that matters. And the lovely thing, I always think about minyan. And minyan, why do we come together? We come together to pray because our prayer changes in some way. And we also need community. Because the change in our prayer that happens when we're in community means that it comes to a different level. It's sort of a different kind of connection to the universe when we're together. And the same is true when we come together to take action for the earth and for justice for all people. And because one person can do a little bit, but a community can do a lot more. And so those are just some of my thoughts. So I just open it up. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, I'm happy to talk, a little bit of discussion or questions at this time.
Gosh, thank you so much. You've given us so much both to think about and enrich us through our tradition, and also so many tangible pieces to move us to action, and to inspire us to take that next step, to figure out what that next step is for each of us, both on the individual and communal level. So thank you so much for sharing both your Torah and also your theory of change.
You're welcome. One of the things that I really want to challenge people is don't get stuck in the little things, okay? You can worry about recycling, and you can think about, some easy things like, composting or changing your lights and stuff. But don't stop there. We can't. We have to do more. So thinking about all of these bigger things, and those of us who are privileged to, own homes and to own cars, and to have a big carbon footprint, all the more so is our responsibility to think about what can we do to reduce that carbon.
Yeah, we have someone in the chat who shared that they had done a conversion of their roof to solar panels.
Yay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Great. Now talk to everybody and get them to do it too. Yeah.
Yeah. So questions for Rabbi Allen. You can use the hand raise button or just unmute and share.
How do you do outdoor services in the winter?
You're talking to the right person. The reality is that what I do for a service is not like there's no full Torah service. And, it's more like a Shabbat meditation walk with lots of pieces of the service. But the thing is, okay, when it's cold, you walk more and you stop and pray less. That's how we do it. I mean, we used to, pre-pandemic in the wintertime, we would often, we have a few partners where there's a church that's next to conservation land. We'd take a walk and then we'd go indoors for discussion and so on. But warm socks. That's so true. It's like I've heard the expression, there's no bad weather, just bad clothing. You know, it all depends on what you wear, and dressing for the weather really makes a difference. And keeping moving makes a difference, and pausing. And, you know, I mean, sometimes it's just really, really hard to be outside, but it can, you know, it's like, and it is amazing. It's wonderful because I mean, I've been doing this prayer outside as my personal practice for so long, is that, you know, I just kind of feel like the connection is so much more open when we're outside. You know, the sky's right there, the trees. Next time you're in the woods, look for the letter Shin in the trees. You know, Shin stands for Shaddai, name of God, Shalom, Sheket, Shalem, peace. And there's a Shin in every tree.
Beautiful. Gosh, thank you. I want to share John, who has been joining us since the beginning of the pandemic from Athens, Georgia. Actually just commented that thanks to you teaching tonight, he's actually just found Jewish Climate Action Network Georgia and is planning on networking to others down there. So thank you for inspiring everybody at Or Hadash South, our unofficial affiliates down in Georgia.
Yes. So there's a JCAN there, there's a JCAN in New York City, and there's a JCAN in this area. We're all totally independent of each other. We just share that name.
Like Hias. No.
Right.
Other questions, comments?
I was wondering how you went about forming the Jewish Climate Action Network.
We started in 2013, and I had been trying for a while to connect with people to do climate work through a Jewish environment and lens, because I really wanted to be doing climate work. I was doing some in secular contexts, and just it wasn't really working for me all that well. I needed to be doing this from a Jewish connection. And so there was another person who was involved at that time, has since gone on to do other things, but I had a table at Limud, and we just like started reaching out to people there. And there were a few of us, we'd connected with people we knew already, but we got enough other people, and we just started meeting, and we just started saying, okay, what do we want to do and how are we going to do it? And we had, actually our very first event was Arthur Waskow came here and he gave a talk, but then in the spring of 2015, we had our first conference. And part of the reason we did that was to just sort of as a way to kind of get the word out there and find people who wanted to be involved. And we've just been growing ever since. And this year with the conference online, it's very different, you know, reaching people all over the country, which we've been doing webinars online for a long time, even before the pandemic. And there's just been different events where we've connected with people in other places too. So, there's just so much to need to be done. And we're really focused on trying, you know, we've got that word action and that network, really trying to get people to act. And a lot of what we do is educating, just trying to get people more, yeah, right, exactly. There's no airplanes involved in online. Yeah. So it's a different experience for all of us, but we're hopeful that we'll get, right now we have over 300 people signed up, 340 or something. So after tonight, there's going to be like another 25, right?
There you go. I think we have time for maybe another question or two. If anyone has a question or a reflection or a piece of Torah inspired by Rabbi Katy's Torah. It makes me wonder actually, and reflect on how, as we begin to think about coming back together in our space at Or Hadash, how we can center sort of environmental justice principles in the way that we design our regathering, thinking about reusables differently, thinking about spaces differently, thinking about clustering programming or not clustering programming, to think about heating and cooling our building strategically. Just a lot to, I think a lot of opportunity as we think about not just, on the congregational level, but in general, as we sort of come out of the pandemic, how we have this opportunity, having sort of stepped back from our routines for more than a year, how we maybe can harness that opportunity to break bad habits. Yes. And create new ones that are healthier, both for ourselves as humans and for the whole planet.
Yeah, I think that's it is a really opportunity to say, what have we found is really the most important thing during this time when we've been connected in a different way. What can we learn from this? And this idea of going back to normal is like, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's some things we want to leave behind, and can we go to a different normal that will lead us more towards a kind of justice for the planet and for all of the people on it, and in particular for the most vulnerable people who are the least responsible and getting the biggest impact, people of color, low-income people, indigenous communities. And be their allies in this effort to regain our sacred connection to the earth. And so, when you go out tomorrow, I invite you to find that tree that you want to hug. I invite you to, to think about the interbreathing earth and the way that your breath connects with the breath of the trees. And what does that mean for you? What does that mean for you? What responsibility comes out of those sacred connections?
Thank you. Katy Allen.
You're so welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure.
And so thank you so much, Rabbi Katy, and thank you so much to our entire Social Action Tikkun Olam committee, and especially to Vivian and Shelley, who have spearheaded the effort to plan tonight and bring Rabbi Katy to speak at Or Hadash and to galvanize this energy for all of us around climate justice as we approach and taking action for climate justice, not just learning and not just hand wringing, but taking action for climate justice, and to fight the rising tide, literally, pun very much intended, of climate change. And so we're going to turn in our Sidurim to Aleinu. Which gives us a vision for the future, a vision where Bayom Hahu Yehyeh Adonai Echad Ushmo Echad, that on that day, all the world shall be one and God's name shall be one. And so often we think about that as the diversity of humanity. But I want to encourage us to think that as we work towards this messianic age, this time of balance, this time of unity, this time of infinite diversity and infinite combinations, that we have as the central metaphor for what it looks like when this time should come, that it's the time when a lion lies down with the lamb. These are not human beings that we are given in this metaphor, right? These are non-human dwellers of this earth that we are given as a metaphor here. And so what does it mean as we work towards, strive towards, fight towards this time when balance is restored, where everything will be called Eden once again, in the words of Judy Chicago? What does it mean to take a more biodiverse view? So I want to offer that as a kavanah as we rise in spirit or in body on page 121 for Aleinu. And then we'll count the Omer. and close with a couple of announcements and Mourner's Kaddish. Page 121. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latet gedula leotzer breshit shenatan lanu Torah emet v'chaye olam nata betochenu v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shmam yosef haaretz. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. We can be seated. We take a moment to count the Omer. And so here is the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer. And here we are. Hayom esrim yom shehem shtei shavuot v'shisha yamim la'omer. Today is 20 days, which makes 2 weeks and 6 days of the Omer. And what is this really wonderful spreadsheet, Rabbi Alana, you might ask? Aha! This is the spreadsheet that is attached to the sign-up for our community counting the Omer. For those who are watching, yes, it is in fact a typo of the Homer. Sorry about that, Guy and Shelley. But no, counting the Omer, or Hadash, O-H, is counting the Omer day by day this year, a different family or household picking and signing up for a day. And there is that lovely handy-dandy spreadsheet that makes it very easy to count the Omer. The blessing is there. Which day you are counting is there. You can say the blessing in Hebrew, count in English. If you're as cool as the Wechterman Nurembergs, you can also count in Klingon or a different foreign language. No one has yet counted in Romulan or Andorian or Bajoran, so there are many languages of the Star Trek universe, not to mention Elfish or High Valerian, if you have a different franchise that you like in the sci-fi multiverse. And I'll stop now before everyone logs out on me. But yes, there are still slots available between now and Shavuot. So yes, please take a second and sign up for a night of counting the Omer. And thank you to all of those who already have. It's wonderful to see everybody's faces and the inside of everybody's homes and a little slice of our lives as together we journey from Pesach to Shavuot. And then, of course, because bringing an Omer is not just about counting the days. In the times of the ancient temple, it was the time when we brought an Omer's worth of barley each day to the temple between the beginning of the barley harvest and the beginning of the harvest of new wheat. And so we are also collecting grain-based products at Or Hadash in partnership with a local food pantry. So do bring rice, quinoa, flour, cereal grains, or processed cereals, pastas. The collection is right next to my office door on the table of all things collected, where up until this past Wednesday, we were collecting kitchen goods for Highest Pennsylvania, and there are a number of other drives going on simultaneously and concurrently throughout the spring. Since I already started talking about the Omer project, I may as well continue with announcements. And so we'll do a little inside out. We'll do announcements first and then Mourner's Kaddish. So tomorrow morning, our service, our Torah study is at 9:00 here on Zoom or in person at Bluebell Hill Park, which is right off of the Walnut Lane Bridge, just between Westmount Area and Manayunk, just off the Walnut Lane Circle. So we're coming over to that end of the area for our Shabbat in the Wissahickon, for Shabbat B'Yachad number 3. And so we're meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning, both on Zoom and in Bluebell Hill Park. That's from 9 to 10. At 10 o'clock, we will have our Torah service together. We're doing it a little inside out so that we can have a minyan together to read Torah. And actually, our laner tomorrow morning will be laning via Zoom. So we will really be a hybrid community, both in nature and sheltering in place at home, as it is safest for each person to do. We'll each make our own decisions. And then there will be an option to go on our service and hike all together in Bluebell Hill Park, biyachad, or biyachid. So tomorrow morning we'll also be emailing out, or maybe Barbara, have you already emailed it out? A guide to the hike that people can do on their own. With a little information about some of the prompts and exercises we'll be doing along the way. So if you are not comfortable joining in person, or you're not feeling well, or for any other reason, or you perhaps live in Florida or California or Washington, D.C. or Georgia, there will be an option to join us biyachad, all together, or biyachid, on your own for the hike. At least we were proud of that pun. And then our Shavuot night of study is coming up in exactly 1 month, on the 16th of May. And if you are interested in leading a discussion group about Revelation and experiences of Revelation and inspiration during this time of the pandemic, I believe that there are a few more slots open for teachers. Contact Manny Rosenberg to teach. I believe that we have all of our slots filled for the first hour, which where we'll be learning about Revelation through the lens of different Jewish thinkers and scholars throughout mostly the modern and contemporary period. And are there any other messages and announcements to share? I think that that'll be it for now. And so again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you so much, Rabbi Katy Allen, for sharing your Torah with us, and to our Social Action Tikkun Olam committee for organizing this Shabbat evening. We'll continue on page 131 for Mourner's Kaddish, and tonight we're marking the yortzites of Rose Garber Alexander, mother-in-law of Marie Alexander, of Marion Snell, mother of Jill Snell, Evelyn Schneer, mother of Shelley Quigley, Seymour Jacobs, father of Marty Jacobs, Harriet Saul, mother of Sandy Saul, Madeline Snyder, grandmother of Steffi Love. And we note that we're in a period of Shloshim, the month following the passing of Joseph Edelstein, brother-in-law of Toby Mackler and Stephen Fisher, and of Sonia Frischkin Zangwill, sister-in-law of Len and Stephanie Zangwill, and aunt of David. And we also note the passing, though we're not yet saying Kaddish, for her, of Eliza Green, mother of Vivian Green, grandmother of Ginevra and Zachary Reif, whose funeral will be this Sunday at 2 p.m. Shiva will be by Zoom on Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. And so if there are others who are saying Kaddish for someone who's not on our list, I want to invite you to share their name in the chat so that they can also be called to our hearts and our memories. And I want to invite mourners. Sandy, go ahead. Sandy, you're still muted. Sandy, you're muted.
Hey,
Go ahead. One more time.
for my mother, Ethel Cutler, who was born in 1902 and died when I was 9. So she saw the world. It's quite the Second World. Zola, and also depression. And she was a lawyer, unusual woman. And
Thanks, Sandy.
a very
Thank you. And Manny adds for his wife, Ellen Stewerman. And yes, clarification, Vivian Green, mother of Eliza Green, her funeral is on Sunday at 2 p.m. There was a question in the chat. And so mourners and those observing a Yortzeit, I want to invite you to rise in spirit or in body for mourners Kaddish, along with those whose tradition it is to rise for Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemeh rabba.
Amen.
Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv imru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemeh dekudsha richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom mimromav hu ya'asu shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing for all of us. And so to everyone we say Shabbat Shalom. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's been such a joy to see one another and be here all together. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.